Hey, Jonathan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Greg. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. I've been really looking forward to talking to you and interviewing you. So, to get started, why don't you just tell us a little bit about your practice and what you specialize in?
Absolutely. My name is Jonathan Bednar. I run a firm in Knoxville, Tennessee, with a satellite location in Chattanooga. I say satellite; they're two fully functioning standalone offices. Uh, our firm is Paradigm Wealth Partners. We serve clients in the East Tennessee region, but also around the country. And I work with my father. I've been doing this 20 years almost. It's actually crazy. I was talking to someone not long ago, and it's just crazy to know that I've already been doing this 2 decades, and it feels like I'm also at the same time just getting started.
Yeah.
Um, so, yeah, we have a lot of clients in the East Tennessee region, but have clients all over the country. I think last I looked, we have clients in 42 states. So not only do we have a great local practice, but we also have a great and thriving virtual practice as well. So we can meet anywhere that someone chooses to raise their hand and say, "Hey, we need help."
Love that. So you work locally, but you don't limit yourself locally. You also have built out the capability to connect with, meet, and serve other people who aren't close to you. Did you start doing that
Absolutely.
during the pandemic? Is that what kind of prompted that?
No, I actually started before. Obviously, the pandemic helped the adoption of uh, clients and being comfortable with meeting and talking virtually. But we actually were using, I think it was Join Me, which I don't, and maybe it's still around, but
I
it's not
haven't
like
heard of Join Me in a long time, man. That's old
it's
school. Yeah.
not a name brand one anymore.
Yeah.
So yeah, we were using Join Me, probably 2015 through 2018, 19. Clients could do it; they could figure it out, but it wasn't, especially like older clients, they weren't as comfortable or used to it. Now it's very streamlined, and I'm not the only one unique to this. Everybody has adapted to this, but it's allowed everybody to find their tribe and the team and the people they want to support them or work with, not only in a professional manner, but friendships and reconnecting with loved ones. So it's been
Yeah.
I think a benefit for society.
Yeah. I like how you've developed a remote culture that was before the pandemic. So you're like OG, Jonathan.
I don't
I
know if
love
I'm
that.
real OG, but yeah, definitely we were rocking and rolling before pandemic for sure.
How many clients do you have now?
Roughly 600 households.
Wow. Congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, it's we're blessed.
Tell me a little bit more about maybe what inspired you to do this.
My parents divorced when I was 4. I have a great relationship with both parents. I lived with my mom, had one sibling. Um, Fortunately for us, there was never like custody battles or anything like that. So I was able to have a good relationship um, with my father, who started the firm. He had worked at Merrill and Edward Jones and Prudential, Hilliard Lyons. There's probably one other that I missed. But anyway, in 2001, he left the Merrill Lynch world and went to a small broker dealer at the time called LPL Financial. There was 3,000 advisors at LPL at that time. But long story short, ever since I was 4 or 5 years old, he would tell me. It's kind of like indoctrinating, I guess. When you grow up, you're going to come work for me, or with me, I should say. Fast forward to 2009, I graduate from school, and I essentially moved right into working with him, and so here we are. This is my 17th year. I said 2 decades earlier, but technically my 17th year.
We can round up. Don't worry
Yeah,
about it.
that's what I do. Sevens round to the next highest number is what they taught
Exactly.
us in school.
Yeah, you're good. We'll
I don't
call
know
it
what they
20.
teach in Common Core net math now. When I'm doing my daughter's homework, I'm like, I know the answer. I don't know how they got to this answer. I know how I would do it, but
Well,
that's a
that
different.
they just like to complicate things. That's why.
They, it's definitely complicated.
So
Um,
your parents were your dad was a big inspiration. It sounds like to you.
yeah, and so today we work together, and we thrive. There's things that I do that he could not do, and there's doesn't want to, doesn't know how, doesn't have the patience, whatever. And there's things that he does that I can't do, and so we really work together nicely. Um, of course, like any partner, father, son, we have our moments, but um, ultimately, it is. I see so many people that come into this profession or other professions with family members, and they butt heads, and for whatever reason it doesn't work. They're 3 or 4 years, and it just
Mm-hmm.
dissolves. One of them leaves or whatever, and it can wreck families. Fortunately, we are not that way. We're actually probably tighter than we've ever been, and while we had a great growing up, he wasn't there every day. And so I remember baseball games, him not being there, and that was hard when you're 6, 7, 8 years old. What I know now was he didn't show up because he didn't want to. He showed up or he didn't show up because he was trying to sacrifice and provide in ways that I could not even begin to grasp at 8 years old. And that was make sure that we lived better than he did. And um, anyway, I'm on a little bit of a tangent here,
Well, it
but
sounds like
the
he was
ultimate.
also laying a path for you two to work together
Correct, he
and
was.
legacy. He
And
was thinking about legacy even then.
today, what we both say is, as hard as it was, back then, it worked out for the best. Things happen for a reason, and we thrive today. We work together great. We have a great relationship, and we've built a beautiful thing over the last 17 years. So
Yeah. I think that's the thing about sacrifice. Sacrifice is you're making a sacrifice for the potential for something to gain in the future. It sounds like something uh, that your dad did for you, which I love, and you're able to
yeah,
enjoy
and
that more today.
there's a lot of sacrifice is a great point, and that's the word we use. Is a lot of people don't see. We're in a an Instagram world. You scroll and you see all the successes of Greg and the Wilnell family, or Jonathan and the Bednar family, or whatever. But you don't see the struggles. You don't see the price that I paid. I mean, and Dad paid. I mean, there's stories where early on in his career he was working 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, and he would literally take a sandwich out of the trash that one of the assistants threw away because he didn't have any money. And there's not a lot of people that will do that. You know, the joke we have is we're literally too stupid to quit. We just keep going. And if you keep going, at some point you reap what you sow. And the same thing for me, the sacrifice for us was I didn't grow up with a dad in my home every day. And it's not that he didn't want to be there, and it's not that he didn't care. It's that he was trying to make sure that the sacrifice that he was making would absolutely pay off. Failure was not an option. So that's how I got in.
I think that if I were to make an assumption, sacrifice is probably something that you and your clients and the people who come to you have in common, right? So on that note, maybe you could describe. Let's talk about more about some of the people who come to you. Maybe you could describe the person who comes to you. Like, what's a typical situation that they need you to help them, to help lead them through?
Life gets complex, and I'm oversimplifying that here, but it is really easy to just contribute money to your 401k. It comes out of your paycheck, and you forget about it, and you're accumulating, and it just happens over time. What happens is as you grow, climb the corporate ladder, or as you transition, you're a small business owner like we are, you're running your small business and it's growing, or you're starting a new small business, uh, or you're raising your family. Life just gets complex. What happens is people hit a kind of a wall, and they're like, I've done X, Y, and Z. Usually they're the bare minimum. I've got a little bit of term life insurance. I'm contributing to my 401k at 4%. I'm getting the match, and I don't know what to do next. So typically, we're working with people that are 40, late 40s, 50s. They have busy lives. They're professionals. They're business owners, um, and they've accumulated some wealth. But it's all, like I said, it's been the accumulation, which tends to be the easiest part. It's what do you do
Yeah.
from there?
Yeah.
So how do you move into retirement? How do you start taking your nest egg and turning it into a paycheck? How do we, what do we do with the house that we bought, that we moved, and we end up keeping it and turned it into a rental? What do we do with that thing? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
um, it's the complex that as a professional, I look at them and I'm like, well, this is really an easy thing. But when I put myself in their shoes, and I'm at, as an example, my brother-in-law's a handyman, really, really great in construction and building. That is not my forte. He
Yeah.
says, floor joist, and I'm like, what is
What's a
that? I
floor
mean,
joist? Yeah.
yeah, so, and that's how these people think.
Yeah.
It's not that they don't want to know. They want the education. They want to make smart decisions.
It's
Either they don't.
overwhelming. Yeah.
They're overwhelmed. They don't have the capacity. They're running their busy lives, and they need someone to just take the bull by the horns and say, "Look, I trust you. Lead me."
Yeah. Yeah. Also, you got to think. I mean, I think of the blue collar contractor analogy, which makes a lot of sense. I have a blue collar background, which I ended up deciding to jump out of that and do white collar and start our own business. But you got to think too, like you've done this hundreds of times. This is their first time,
Yeah.
so it's overwhelming. What are some of the questions that maybe your clients typically ask when they meet with you for the first time? Let's get more down to it. Let's bring it down to earth and be more specific. What are some of the questions that they typically will ask when they're approaching this transition and this uncertainty?
A lot of it starts out at, um, do I have enough money? Can I really truly afford to retire? How do I turn my nest egg into a paycheck? Um, you know, what what things am I not doing? Should I get long term care insurance? Um, I need to help my kids, finish up college and start their career. How do I help them? And then it gets into some more complex things. How do I sell my small business? What is this thing worth?
Mm-hmm.
They're so busy building their business that a lot of times, you and I could also probably be guilty of this, that sometimes we don't focus enough on the business. Are we growing it the right way?
Mm-hmm.
Are we and those are the same struggles that clients have. How do you move this business to the next generation if you've got a family member coming in? What's it worth? um,
Yeah.
Other simple questions. We've built this money up. I want to retire and move to the beach, but I don't know where to move, or how to do it, or can I afford it?
Mm-hmm.
So um, what seem like easy, mundane questions, they need someone can be the sounding board for, yes, this is a good idea. Yes, you can do it and it makes sense. Or no, you can do these things instead.
Mm-hmm. Things that
Here's
they
the
might
couple
not have
ways.
even thought about.
Thought of.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. So you're basically that guide to help them lead them through that. I'd imagine too, and we talk about this a lot, that there's an entire retirement comes with entire identity change. Oftentimes our identity can come from the work that we do. And when that work is no longer necessary for you to live, it's an exciting thing, but you're like, okay, well, where does my kind of meaning come from? What's my identity here? And I think that that's also something that you might um, help them work through this directly or maybe indirectly. We'll get into some of the ways that you answer those questions for your clients here in a little bit when we talk about how you work with them over the course of a calendar year and what it looks like to start working with you. But for the sake of time, let's talk more about maybe your values and your approach and kind of your philosophy for how you work with your clients. Is that cool?
That's great.
All right, man. So where do you typically find your clients? What are some of the ways, and what are some of the ways that you get to know them as individuals?
Yeah. So we have a lot of households that we serve. So a lot of our clients come through referrals and word of mouth from other people that have worked for us or with us for a long time. We are part of the Dave Ramsey SmartVestor program. So we get people that come through that. And what I've interestingly found on that is, Dave talks a certain message on his program. And most of the people that come through that program are not hardcore Dave Ramsey. They're like Dave Ramsey light. And I think that's important to know that what he has done has helped a tremendous amount of people. But he can't get on the radio and say, Greg, you can do this, and Jonathan, you can do that, because it waters down the message. Reality is, people, when they come to us, they want the individualized plan and strategy. And so that's what we're able to provide, not just the 7 baby steps, but how do you actually implement them and what makes sense and where does it make sense to deviate? So those are 2 places. The other place people find us on is I've published 2 books. And so there is some people that find those books on Amazon or some of the blogs over time. I've done a podcast and they just kind of naturally, organically, they listen and they've read and they followed and, out of nowhere, they kind of raise their hand.
I've actually got one of your books behind me.
Yeah, the white one with the blue. Yeah, there it is.
There it is, baby. Look at that stud right there, man.
That's the second, man. That was young me.
Yeah, I love this book. This is great.
And honestly, that is kind of mapped out how I think about financial planning and how we work with people, which we'll get into in a second. But the last place is I've recently started being more intentional about YouTube. And that is a great place for people to get a sense of who I am, how I think, and people can, raise their hand and say, yeah, I think he's the guy, or watch a video and say, no, I don't jive with him for whatever. He's got a weird quirk and, has this blink or whatever, and move on.
His hair's parted on the right. I don't feel good about that.
I don't know if that's the guy. But yeah, that's been fun to just be more open. I think when you and I first started kind of working together over, several years ago, I was just doing a podcast and you had some real head trash around, like, how do you do it? Do you have the right equipment? And over time, I've just learned, like, it's okay if you mess up, you can edit it out.
Yeah.
Or don't even edit out. Just acknowledge, I didn't mean to say that. What I meant to say was this, or, the dog walks by and, bumps into the table and the camera. It's not a big deal. And actually, people appreciate the human aspect of that versus everything being edited perfectly. And so what going through that podcast has done is allowed me to have the confidence to not be perfect, but just have progress and communicate and let people find.
Yeah. Yeah. What you're talking about, what you're describing is putting yourself out there in the public space for people to, quite frankly, kind of judge and evaluate who you are before they get in touch with you. And that could be a scary, intimidating thing. And sometimes we'll find ways to procrastinate that, avoid that, get around it. and defer it, but you kind of just have to embrace it because it's the only way that you can really connect with people. And it's kind of a service, because if you believe that you have something valuable to add, a certain type of people that you can serve and help, you owe it to them to at least put yourself out there in a fair shot where they can decide for themselves. And that's one of the goals that I hope for with this podcast. Is I hope that you feel comfortable talking about yourself, but also the questions that we ask are designed to help somebody who might be a good fit for you authentically judge and determine that for themselves. And then they're like, this guy's interesting. Let me see if I can talk with him further. So
Certainly.
I love that, man. That's great. All right. Let's see where we're at with time. Time is, we got about 9 minutes left. So, all right, let's ask this one. And the way I always start this question is with, you own a business. I own a business. A lot of the people listening might not own a business, but they'll probably be able to relate to this, and that oftentimes we'll think about the things that we're doing wrong or that we want to do better. And seldomly do we acknowledge the things that we're good at. So this might be hard, but I want you to give it a shot. So put your humble hat on for a second and tell us about something that you will do for your clients that takes a significant amount of time, but that they might never see or know about. This could be you, or it could be just your team or your company in general.
This is a great question, and one that's really hard. I mean, I didn't have this question before, so I can't, this is not rehearsed. I think what I would say to this question, the way that I would answer this question is, our intention to just be here when people need us most. So that's not necessarily busy work that we're doing behind the scenes to show that we're adding value. And I think that's the trap a lot of people fall in. We're charging clients financial planning fees, or they're paying us for their investment management. So we need to do these things every month or every quarter to show that we're adding value. And so where I would say on this is, we tell people the truth and we stay in touch. And those are our two commitments to our clients. And it's nothing that I can prove to somebody on a podcast or a YouTube channel. You have to experience it. We have staff that answers the phone. And if you need to talk to us, we're here. I don't sit behind the phone and say we only return our calls on Wednesdays and Fridays between 3 and 4. If you need us, we respond, we answer our calls, we return your calls. And making ourselves available is, I feel like, the most important thing. When you're sick and you need to go to the doctor, you don't care what he's doing and what research he's doing in the background. You want to know that when you're sick, you can make an appointment, you can go to the doctor, you can be seen, they can address your issue. And I think that's where we thrive. We don't hide behind the computer. We don't hide behind busy work. And I know advisors that do. There are advisors that will say, I know many of them that will say, I can't take the calls because I can't let clients have unabated access to me because it gets me distracted and I can't get other work done. Or, they might not think I'm busy or whatever. And I think you're setting yourself up for losing clients that way. So we answer the phones, we return our calls. If I don't know the answer, I will tell you I don't know the answer, but I will find it out and I will be back with you. But that's what we pride ourselves on: our communication and our trust. And there's no way for me to prove it other than
You got to experience it.
You got to experience it.
I think that makes a lot of sense, because doing that takes a lot of time, but the outcomes are the experience. And being there is something that takes a lot of mental bandwidth and emotional bandwidth. It's easy probably to hide, as you said, hide behind your computer. It's a lot harder to make sure that you're there no matter what. So
let me give an example on this. This client was probably, I don't know, probably, it was before pandemic, it's probably 2018 timeframe. And we had been working together for about 2 years. And they just got to they had a camper. They were underwater on the camper from, just bad people that sell things have an incentive to sell the thing. They don't care
Mm-hmm.
how it impacts the finances down the road. And, essentially we, they couldn't pay. They couldn't pay for it. And so they had to essentially stop making payments. And so just a lot of showing up for those people and letting them talk about the harassing calls from collections and what do we do? And I mean, I remember the wife, crying in my office, just can't get past how stressful. But one thing that they love so much, traveling in this thing, then finances change and they can't afford it anymore. And so we work through, and I didn't get paid for this, but we worked through writing letters they owed $88,000 on this thing. And we would send a letter and say, I can pay you this amount, and that's all I can pay you. And finally, after about 2 years of sending letters, the company finally took an offer of $18,000 to pay a camper off that they owed, but they knew they weren't going to get anything for it. So if they could
Mm-hmm.
get 18 and then sell it,
Yeah.
um,
Wow. So
but it's a
you
lot
took
of,
that on and took that burden off their shoulders. That's
and
incredible.
no, didn't get paid for it, didn't get, there's nothing there other than I knew if it was my mom or my grandmother and grandfather, whatever, I would hope someone would do something like that for them. And that's how we treat our clients. So that's not the success story that a lot of people will hear about. A lot of people are saying, well, I helped this guy go from, 200,000 and sell his business for 5 million. And that's all fine and good. We have those stories as well. But I want to make sure we tell people that we're human, and we want to make sure that you have good experiences with us. And if you choose to work with us, we're married, we're family,
Yeah.
and we will have your back. So anytime you need us, we're here.
So on that, walk me through your actual process. Walk us through your actual process. When somebody becomes a client, let's say somebody becomes a client today, what happens the first 4 to 8 weeks? And what does it look like to work with you during the course of a calendar year? Walk me through this process.
Yeah. So typically there's kind of an intro meeting. Are we the right fit for you? Are you the right fit for us? Again, typically that's someone that's 50 plus with around $1 million or more. And we have people with less. We help everybody that wants to raise their hand and need help. But ideally, we work best with people that are around 50 with $1 million. So after that first meeting, you've decided you want to move forward with us. We start our financial planning process. And so it simply starts with us sending you a secure upload link, and you send me as much data as you can: tax returns, statements, your estate planning documents. We review those. Your mortgage statement, any financial data that you can for us to begin this process. From there, we take that data and we start working on kind of the financial planning process. At the same time, we're having, kind of that intro meeting to this second meeting. We are talking a lot about your core values and your identity. You talked earlier about your identity, and I talk about this a lot. When you meet someone new, a lot of times one of the first questions they ask you is, what do you do, or what did you do, or where did you retire from? And that's how we identify. Rarely do I identify when I meet someone and say, yeah, I'm a dad, I'm a husband. I just kind of hope they de facto know that. I always lead with, I'm a financial advisor. We identify with so much. I'm a dad, I'm a father, I'm a husband, a brother, a son, a follower of Christ. conservative. Those are my beliefs, and that's who I work best with.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's part of. I'm also a financial advisor, a financial planner, but we're so much more than what just our career is. So what I'm trying to get people to do is think about, aside from their career, what does life look like? Are they going to, are they a local guitar player in their punk band for fun? Are they become a gardener? What are they going to do?
Yeah.
But the other thing I want to connect people with is, and this from working with me in the past, is um, their core values and dreams. That's what I'm trying to get out of people, because that's where I think we can provide the most purpose and value and fulfillment for them. So a lot of advisors talk about your goals, your 1-year goals, your 5-year goals, your 10-year goals. I believe goals are like New Year's resolutions. When you don't hit them in the first 2 weeks, you give up, you move on, you restart. It doesn't matter. If we can tie your dreams, the big aspirations, to your core values, which is who you are deeply seated in your soul, and we can combine those, the intersection of those two things together, that's how I make sure retirement is fulfilling and fun, and leaving a legacy to those that you care about. And if I can't do those, then I failed as the advisor. I haven't done what's really important for you to have that fulfilling retirement. So we have conversations, and it's really difficult for me to say, Greg, what are your core values? They come out in conversations. You're good at this when you talk to people. And I can just pause and say, it sounds like, faith is really important to you. Is that accurate? You've mentioned your church and tithing and doing X, Y, Z. And so it sounds like faith is important. Do you think that would be one of your core values? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
You've talked a lot about family and how they're important to you and the things that they do. And so it sounds like family is probably one of your core values. And so we go through these exercises. And again, it's not filling out a bubble scantron. It's through conversation. It's natural. We're in a
Yeah.
relationship. That gives me the idea I need to know how I can provide advice and guidance for you in the future. So couple that with the financial data, and we kind of give you here's where you are today. Along with, we start making recommendations based on what we know about you, based on what you're trying to achieve. Here are the levers that we can pull and the knobs that we can twist to make sure that you have that, first of all, enough money to sustain retirement. But secondly, you can't take any of this with you. So how do we make those golden years fulfilling? And that's the process.
I love how you distinguish between goals and dreams. I think that's really important. Goals might change, but I think once you've determined what your dream is and you're committed to it, it probably doesn't change as much, you know? And I love how you can be a vehicle and a guide to help work on those and also map money and finance to how to do that. I think that's a really powerful thing. I love that,
Yeah.
Jonathan. So for somebody who resonates with this, they're interested in you, they're not offended by your hair being parted on the right hand side, how should somebody who is listening get in touch with you? What should they do next?
They can go to our website, www.paradigmwealthpartners.com, and you can read through there, get information on our firm, who we are, and then there's a link at the top, or a button at the top that says, I think it's schedule consultation or schedule meeting. You can click that, and it'll take you right to our calendar to book a time with us. That's one option. The second option is you can either follow me on my podcast, What the Wealth, or go to our YouTube channel, Paradigm Wealth Partners, and find me there. Those are the best places. So I would say the website or the YouTube channel would be the best place to find me.
All right, Jonathan. Sounds good. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate you.
Yep. Thanks for having me, Greg. Great talking to you.
My pleasure.